Vuyo, we will start off with a heavy question right off the bat. Why did you join the real world?
Oh, cool. Initially, I'd been at university. I'd just been finishing up at university when I was getting around to joining the real world. I had finished my university degree, completely finished around September time, and I was still living at university until about Christmas time when I was coming home. And obviously, the whole COVID stuff. Sorry, can I mention COVID, by the way?
Yeah.
So obviously, I studied during the time when the COVID pandemic and everything was going on. A lot of my university classes was online, and there wasn't much contact during it. And I actually ended up having quite a downward spiral, if you can say, during that time. My life kind of fell apart towards the last 2 years of my degree, and yeah, I guess you could say I was depressed as such. That's when I actually stumbled across Andrew Tate and his content and everything. And he completely kind of flipped my life upside down in that regard, in terms of getting back into shape, into having a kind of direction and vision for my life. And it's kind of funny actually. When he first, I agreed with a lot of the stuff he was saying, and I was really motivated to do stuff. But every time he would mention his real world or his hustlers university course, I was always so skeptical of it. Like I refused to ever like even give it a second thought for like it must have been at least a month. I like every time he mentioned it, I'll just move on. I just thought of like some pyramid scheme kind of thing. And then in the end, I think I had signed up for his newsletter. And on his newsletter, I see there's a lot of irony in this now actually, but in his newsletter, he was doing like a Christmas special. And it was like, you can join for $49 instead of $250, which obviously now I know it's always just $50. But at the time, I was like, you know, I'll take advantage. It's only $50. I joined the real world for $50, and it's there's just so much value in it. It's insane. And yeah, that's how I ended up joining the real world.
So a lot to go into there. First,
Yeah.
I'd like to know what were you doing in uni? What were you studying?
So I studied biomedical science.
Okay, interesting. What made you get into that?
I've just always excelled at science in general at school. Obviously my first choice was medicine. My grades weren't my I got good grades, but they weren't good enough to do medicine at university. So the standard option is normally just to go into biomedical science, and that's just what I ended up doing.
Okay,
It wasn't
so
particularly enjoyable, but I didn't hate it. So
and okay, so you didn't hate it, but it was just something you were following because it was the path laid out. Did you have any other plans to do something else, or was that what you were going to go with?
so I was really big into fitness and training alongside my studies. So I was always into the bodybuilding culture and everything. Still, I still follow it and whatnot, but in terms of career path and job, I didn't really ever know what I was going to do. I didn't see myself spending my entire life in a lab, but I didn't really see any other kind of option, if that makes sense. That's kind of just do one thing and then focus on the next thing whenever it comes up, I guess.
Right. Okay. And you said quite a big impact from Tate. Could you go a bit more into depth how he impacted you?
So, to be quite frank, I was even at one point I was actually suicidal. Like things just got really bad in my life at that point in my university time, and I think it was almost like a stroke of luck that I found his content at the time that I did, and it really I think it took root quite deeply with me, and I resonated a lot with all the things he was saying. I got back in the first thing that ended up happening was I started training again, and obviously that just improved my mood massively. I started training again. I came home obviously from university after I finished my degree, started eating properly again, and then he really got me focused on the importance of having money to do what you want to do in life and having the drive and direction to go and achieve it, and no matter what circumstance you're facing. So at first, when I thought his whole thing was a scam, I was trying to do it myself. So I was reading like 4 hours a day of finance books and money books. I got into like trading, trying to teach myself that kind of stuff. Um, So I was basically trying to self-teach myself ways to make money. I was basically working all day, every day. I was really focused, but I wasn't really finding much success, but I wasn't willing to give up either. Yeah.
So great to hear that you're able to overcome that, and now it seems things are looking a lot better, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah, definitely.
Good, good, good. Okay. Moving on to when you said for a month you thought the real world is a scam. So what was the mindset there? Could you go again a bit more in depth into why you thought that was the case?
I don't know. It just seemed a bit too good to be true, if that makes sense. Like I thought it had to be some kind of pyramid scheme. Like he would say all this amazing stuff, and then it would end every all his content with join my school for $49. And I'm like, what could you possibly be giving people for $49 unless you're just finessing everybody? And yeah, I don't know. The logical part of my brain was almost screaming at me, if that makes sense. But I don't know. I don't know how to explain it. Like there was no obvious reason why I thought it was a scam. It was too good to be true, but it is.
Because yeah, usually you'd think courses, the content in the course correlates to the price, but in this
Yeah,
case, it's way over delivering for the price, and it's just something you're not really used to in that case from people who usually sell courses or other things, whatever they sell. So I guess this is a good transition into when you joined the real world. How different was the material in the e-commerce campus compared to what you found on the internet?
So when I was self-teaching myself and obviously buying books, watching videos and stuff, the biggest issue I think is that there's so many people with so many different ways of saying to do everything, which contradict everybody. Someone has to be lying at some point because they're all saying completely different things that just go completely against each other. Or sometimes they'll say stuff in like almost in riddles, basically. But when it came to the real world, it's literally just laid out for you. Like the only reason you couldn't do something is because you didn't work at it or you just couldn't be asked to do it. Like there's no way to not understand something in the real world. I actually started in the copywriting campus when I first came because I didn't have the money to do ecom because obviously you need some starting capital to do e-commerce. So I started with copywriting and I did that for about a month. I'll say I was really focused on that. I practiced my copywriting skills every day, and then I actually landed my first client and got £400. And yeah, when I made my first money, it was an amazing feeling. But like the professor there is amazing as well. Andrew Bass is he really does care about his students. He really does have a lot of passion for what he does, and I really enjoyed the copywriting campus. And I think the fact that I spent so much time working on it has really benefited my e-commerce as well because I basically could write really good copy for my entire store and all my ads and everything. So it's not like a wasted skill when I transfer campus, but yeah.
Yeah. For perspective, when did you join the real world?
December.
And what you're saying about the copywriting campus, right? Even if you don't necessarily have to use copywriting for anything, it's still such a useful skill to have as a foundation. So yeah, then it's obviously even better if you can translate it to something like an e-commerce store in your case. And now when you moved on to e-commerce, how was that in terms of material?
So e-commerce was it was quite different from coming from copywriting because I thought copywriting was I wouldn't say a difficult campus, but it required a lot of time and focus time, like not just idle time, if that makes sense. Like you have to actively be doing stuff, actively looking for clients every day. I was doing like 6 hours of prospecting every day. I was obviously practicing my copy every day. Like there's a lot to do in your to-do list every single day if you want to be good and successful in the copywriting game. With ecom, there's a lot of stuff to do at the beginning, but it's nowhere near as complicated, if that makes sense. Like it's very basic tasks, it's just very time consuming. Like you have to learn and understand a lot of stuff, you have to execute a lot of tasks, but I would say it's a lot easier than copywriting, but it's a lot more, I wouldn't say simpler, but it's more laid out, if that makes sense.
And how much have you earned from e-commerce since starting?
So today I've earned around £11,000 in revenue from ecom.
In what time span?
About a month and 2 weeks.
And are you comfortable revealing how much of that was profit?
Yeah, so with profit, that's about 3.5K.
Yeah, very nice. And did you expect that coming in?
So when I first joined the ecom campus, and you look in the wins channel, obviously, you're seeing these people doing these crazy numbers. Like even to this day, I'm looking in the wins channel and I see people doing like 40, 50K, like weeks, 20K days. Like they're the people I'm now like going against. But when I was first looking in the wins channel, I'm even just looking at the people with one sale, $30, $50 their first sale, and you're like, I can't see myself ever having that one sale. But it's I guess for some people it motivates them. Like I would look in there, I'll see some 16-year-old kid making like 30, 40K, and I'm like, I'm not getting beat by a 16-year-old kid at this. So yeah.
And then again, for perspective, how old are you?
22 now.
Oh, nice. So 22 and 3.5K from e-commerce in profit within 6 weeks. Where do you see this heading for you in, let's say, 6 months to 1 year?
So the past 3 days or so, we've been hitting our highest numbers. So we've been getting around 1K a day revenue. So around 300 to 350 pound profit a day is what we're hitting now. And the thing is, we've barely, in terms of like what we can do with what I'm doing, we haven't actually started scaling that much. Like we're not spending much on ads. I'm still only targeting the UK, so I've still got a lot of other countries I can start targeting. And obviously, I want to start scaling to spending like 300, 400, 500 pound a day on ads and upwards. So my next goal is to be hitting like 5K a day, 5K a day days, and 10, 20. I really think the sky is the limit when it comes to this kind of stuff. Like I'm also starting a second store in ecom that I'm doing alongside it. So my ambition is to make as much money as possible, and I don't like wasting a single hour in the day, if that makes sense.
Beautiful. So since you said don't like wasting a single hour in the day, I'm wondering, how has your average day changed now? How is it now compared to how it used to be before you joined the real world?
Yeah, so before I joined the real world, I was like I said, I wasn't in the best of places. I was drinking, smoking weed. Like I'd wake up at whatever time. I had my job. I'd wake up like 10 minutes before I did my 9 to 5 job. Like life was pretty mediocre now that I look back at it. Whereas now I've got a lot more focus. I'm always excited to wake up. Like I don't always feel like waking up, but I'm always excited to tackle what I've got to do that day. And it's just the matter of I wake up at like 6 a.m. I go train for 2 hours in the gym, come back, and then it's just working 10, 12 hours straight.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's nothing else to do but work. So it's like, what else would I be doing?
To some people, it might sound excessive, but I think you found a purpose to strive towards. So it's worth putting all that time. Because what else are you going to do? Turn off your brain watching YouTube, letting the algorithm take your attention, and just, letting your brain rot? I mean, what's the alternative?
It's like funny because I tried to take a break like a week ago, like just to have a day off. And I think I walked to town. I went to the cinema and I was watching the new Ant-Man movie. Halfway through the movie, I just left and went home to do more work. Like all I could think about in the cinema is the fact that I'm just wasting time. I couldn't even watch the full movie.
In terms of, for people who might say that's excessive, would you have anything to add on top of what I've said?
I think I don't think it's excessive. I think it's obsessive, I would say. But I think you need to be obsessive about what you're doing to some degree if you want to be successful. Like even if you look at any extreme in any industry, whether you're an athlete or whether you work in, I don't know, you know what I'm saying? But like you have to be really taking it to the extreme. Like when I was really into bodybuilding, I was in the gym 3 times a day, but I also looked the absolute best I ever did in my life. Like I think you have to be obsessive, and I also think in the grand scheme of things, it will benefit my life because if I'm obsessive about making money for the next 5 years, I'm only what 27 years old. I've still got my entire life to then enjoy and spend that money if I choose to. Or you can have a work-life balance and be stuck doing a 9 to 5 for the next 40 years. You know what I mean?
Yeah, completely fair. And moving on to, what would you say was the biggest challenge you faced when first starting out with, let's go with e-commerce?
The biggest challenge that I faced with ecom, money definitely. So I actually started an e-commerce course with like 100. Like I'm not even joking. I started the e-commerce course with £100 in my Barclays account. And I think it must have been by sheer, like looking back at it now, knowing what I know about picking products and doing advertising and website design and all that, it must have been by sheer luck that the first product I picked actually got sales. And it was on some level self-sustaining. So yeah, the first product I picked actually did semi-okay. So I kind of got some money in to keep things going, barely like pulling itself along by the string. But yeah, the biggest issue I definitely faced was capital. But then I carried on working. I never quit my 9 to 5, so I started obviously spending my money properly and not wasting it on random garbage, and started reinvesting all that money I was getting from my 9 to 5 into ads. Um, and yeah, my product obviously ended up working. So
It's interesting to look back on when you see also with the knowledge you have now, when you were saying it's unexpected that you got to where you are now off of that. Okay, so I'll move on to what have been the three biggest lessons you've learned from your time in the real world?
three biggest lessons I've learned is don't try to reinvent the wheel in terms of like you're not doing something new when you go into ecom. You're just doing something better than what people are already doing, if that makes sense. Obviously, you have to be creative in how you approach it, but like I feel like some people create problems that don't actually exist, and like everything is literally given to you. I think another thing that I've learned is if I'm getting information from outside the real world, if I'm getting advice from someone in the real world, knowing if they're a trustworthy source, if that makes sense, like understanding if they know what they're talking about, even if I might not know the subject they're giving advice on. I'm not sure if I can come up with a third thing that I've learned.
We can go with top two for now, and then in the follow up, you'll give us some more in the follow up interview. Once things have scaled for you to, I don't know. What do you expect it to scale to?
I think we'll definitely hit 10K a day at some point in terms of revenue. I think my goal that I think we can genuinely hit, I think we can definitely hit three and a half, 300 to 350K revenue by the end of this year, maybe four. I definitely think it's an achievable goal. I think it's just a matter of putting your head down, putting the hours in. And obviously, I'm starting my second store, so there's also an element there on how well that second store does as well.
So we can do a follow up in a few months, maybe 3 months, to see how that has scaled. Looking forward to that. And now moving on to what impact, if any, has the community within the real world had on you?
When it came to when I first joined the real world, one thing that I came into the real world with was a really focused mindset. Like I didn't want any negativity around me. Like so, I straight away recognized that there was so much good value here that was just handed to me on a free platter. And I really liked the fact that the professor was responding to everyone like within 24 hours. He was really active in the chat, which personally I don't think I could do because he answers the same questions like 50 times a day. But I found that a lot of people get stumped by very mundane, simple issues in the ecom chat, and they would let issues that weren't really issues drag them down. So I felt like sometimes the quality of the people in the chat was really low compared to people who were winning who didn't really talk in there. But then I think they added a new section where it was like the advanced chat section. So after you made over 10K revenue, you could talk to people who've also made that amount. And I found that chat to be a lot higher quality. And getting 10K without having to interact with everybody is 100% achievable. So I really like how to separate the community in that way. But I definitely did. So I really enjoyed the store designing aspect of e-commerce. So I definitely did hang around the store review section and give people tips, help them out. And a lot of the time when I was reviewing people's stores, I saw a lot of things that I liked and also implemented in my store. So yeah, the community is really that. The community I really do like because we're all going in the same direction. But you do notice the people who are really trying to do something compared to the people who just find every little thing to complain about.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense. And you'd expect that people who come in at the start, they won't know what they're doing. So yeah, it's lower quality. But glad to hear that the experienced chat, so-called experienced, advanced chat, whatever, has been so useful to you. And now, before we end off, what advice would you have to people who are in a similar position to where you used to be for a whole month of thinking, surely there's no way that the real world isn't a pyramid scheme or whatever you'd want to call it. So, what advice would you have to those people with the experience you have within the real world now?
I would honestly just say to those people, like, if you're actually serious about making money and you're not just using the whole pyramid scheme thing as a deflection to not do any actual work, you'll probably find you're spending $50 on complete garbage in your life every single week in some area. And that, like, at the end of the day, even if it was a scam, which is not, it's only $50 to find out. It's not exactly your life savings. And you will make your money back tenfold, hundredfold. It's 100% worth the risk.
Right. As long as you put the work in.
100%. Yeah, I think people have a misconception that you just join and money starts coming into your bank account. Life doesn't work like that. It's simply, I remember Andrew Tate saying something that, like, you can dig as hard as you want, but if you're digging where there's no gold, then, but you still have to dig at the end of the day, regardless of what you do.
Mm-hmm. And the real world, that analogy is, it gives you the direction towards the gold. So you're not just aimlessly digging. Vuyo, really appreciate your time to come on for this interview. And as I said, I look forward to doing a follow-up with you to see how things have scaled. And until then, I wish you all the best.
Thank you. It's been great having this interview with you.